let's go to again. There you are, Catherine. You won't be able to get out the door tonight. Your head will be so big. But look, a story last week that an associate professor at Sydney University, Salvatore Barbonis, told an inquiry into national security risks affecting the Australian higher education and research sector that universities should be forced by the government to be transparent about China. Catherine, your thoughts?
Well, it's self-evidently true, Alan, isn't it? And, you know, where there's smoke, there's fire. There was that data breach at the Australian National University that was generically described in the language that is used as a sophisticated state actor. That is no coincidence that occurred at an institution with enormous links to our military and national security apparatuses. It produces a number of graduates in strategic studies who populate our intelligence agencies and defence. It was quite clearly China. And so the point he makes is well made. Universities are high on the list of influence institutions that they seek to exert control over and infiltrate.
Let me raise with you and I...
Confucius Institutes.
Yeah, well, I'll come to that because you and I talked about this last year. We had a student in Queensland, Drew Pavlou, expelled for criticising Chinese influence at the university. Now, the bloke who did the most to expel him, Vice-Chancellor Peter Hoy, has now received a 5-year contract as Vice-Chancellor of the University of Adelaide. No one who attempted to expel this young man, this young student, has ever been punished. Most have been rewarded. No. The Chancellor, Peter Varghese, just received a new 5-year deal as Chancellor of Queensland University. 5 years is worth millions. The woman who headed the kangaroo court that expelled Drew Pavlou got an Order of Australia medal. And the Consul General, Zhu, the Chinese Consul General, remains a diplomat in Australia, continues to occupy his position as a professor at Queensland University, even after drawing the condemnation of the US ambassador to Australia for having encouraged Chinese students to physically assault Drew Pavlou and other pro-Hong Kong students. The Chinese Consul General actually praised the Chinese Communist Party students for their patriotic behaviour. Catherine, it seems as if you try to destroy free speech on Australian campuses by going after student critics of the Chinese state. You'll be handsomely rewarded.
Well, that's the evidence from the account you've just given, isn't it? And I've stayed in touch with young Drew, as I know you have as well, and he stood alone against, it was like the lone tank man in Tiananmen Square against that apparatus, and shame on them. But it's a broader problem, Alan, as well. Apart from the odious and pernicious influence of the Confucius Institutes, and yet the Ramsay Institute could barely find a home on an Australian campus, a very moderate former Chief Justice of the High Court, hardly a rabid capital C Conservative, Robert French, formerly of the Native Title Tribunal in Western Australia in the Federal Court, found that there was a problem, that there was something to see in terms of a generic freedom of speech problem, a chilling of free speech on Australian campuses. Sally Walker then followed up at the government's behest to see whether any of the French code had been implemented, and it has barely been taken up. Correct. 9 out of 42 showed some degree of compliance. 16 outright have done nothing about it. But it's the old Bob Dylan lyric, isn't it? Money doesn't talk, it screams.
That's
and
it.
The cash cow upon which the tertiary sector has been built until the COVID lockdowns and closure of borders has been soft money pouring in from foreign enrolments.
Yes.
And I taught in the university sector until 5 years ago, and I'm willing to say it on the record, I was told by a professor not to fail a single foreign student because they were paying full freight, and I would have failed 50% of them because the work they were submitting was puerile and barely legible in the English language at a tertiary award, a degree award-winning institution, and you just shake your head. It's compromised. Well, just I walked away.
Just illustrating that point, so take Queensland back to Queensland. There are 20,000 international students pre-coronavirus in Queensland, half from China. So the international tuition fees, $670 million. So, Catherine, money comes before basic freedoms.
Absolutely. And as I said to you once when we were discussing this before, if our values are for sale, then China will win. And, I quoted Alexander Hamilton that a nation that prefers disgrace and dishonour to danger is ready for a master, and it deserves one. And that is the lesson that is coming out of this, that it's only a rort if you're not in it on these Australian campuses.
Well, I mean, it's everywhere. It's what you say. It's everywhere, Catherine, because the University of New South Wales Vice-Chancellor Ian Jacobs last year offered this rhetorical flourish. Campus is a place for people to express all sorts of different views. Some of them will offend quite a lot of people. Some of them will be patently ridiculous. I don't mind. I want people to be able to give these views and other people to be able to object to them. But Elaine Pearson from the University of New South Wales committed the intellectual crime. She called for a UN special envoy to be appointed to monitor human rights in Hong Kong. Now, this Professor Baboni said last week, universities should be made by government to be transparent about their dealings with China. Elaine Pearson made the comment about a special envoy. The University of New South Wales tweeted the comment on its main Twitter account. China entered the fray via Global Times, prompted an orchestrated social media condemnatory posts of Elaine Pearson. What did the Vice-Chancellor Jacobs do? Withdrew the tweet.
Capitulated.
Yeah.
And the Deputy Head of Mission only last week here in Canberra, who'd given that clunky propagandist speech to the National Press Club about 6 months ago, Wang Jing gave a speech that was reported yesterday in The Australian, chilling in the ominous language, the choice of language, the coercive, threatening language, saying that those who didn't embrace China would not be spoken of in generations to come. This is preposterous, occurring on our own soil, and we should be very wary of it. And the point made by Salvatore Barbones is absolutely correct. The Commonwealth has enormous power in this area, and it's time to flex its muscles.
Absolutely.
Dan Tehan had a red-hot go at it. But under the corporations' power, they need to legislate a freedom of speech code, legislate it or cut off the dough.
That's it. The last point, Catherine, cut off the dough. I mean, if you're the government, you'd say, well, we're not telling you what to do at the university, but I'll tell you something. If this rubbish goes on, the money won't be forthcoming. Make up your mind. Good on you, Catherine.
Absolutely.
We'll talk to you again next week. Lovely. Well done.